Good afternoon. Could you tell your classmates to join in so we could start?
Dok, pa-accept daw po nung ibang classmates.
Admitting.
Thank you po.
Bagal mag-admit eh. Okay, I think we could start. Okay, good afternoon. So for this afternoon, we have our sources of data. It's a fairly simple topic, but nevertheless important, especially eventually when you do research work. Okay? Knowing where to get your data in research is very much important and actually gets half the job done. Okay, so this is a lecture of Dr. San Luis. So these are our objectives for this afternoon. So sources of data that we use in biostatistics and how we collect data, advantages and disadvantages of each, such that when we do a sample investigation, we know how to do it. Okay? So difference between primary and secondary is clear. So primary data is any data that you gather by yourself. Okay? So this is original data collected by the investigator. So you observe it, you hear it for yourself and collect it specifically to aid you in answering different questions that you have set for the study. Just admit some. So ways to collect data. Of course, we could interview. So you data is personally collected by the interviewer. So you get from different correspondents. You could use a questionnaire filled by enumerators and telephone interviews. Keep getting interrupted by admission. Right? So what is a questionnaire? So a list of questions with a space for answers would be a questionnaire. So usually, when you do your research on your second year and third year, if you are to make your own questionnaire, you have to make a pilot test. What is a pilot test? It's a small scale trial to see if your questionnaire is okay. So you comment on your respondent will comment and point out any problems with the test instructions and instances where items are not clear or concepts are vague or you have your typographical errors. Okay? So I'm sure you have answered a lot of questionnaires in the past, and qualities of a good questionnaire would be the following. Of course, there's a cover letter which would say objectives and scope of the survey. Why are you being questioned? You don't want a long questionnaire, don't want a short questionnaire either. So there are no personal questions, clear and simple, and there should be a logical arrangement of thought. Okay? Okay. So here would be your collection of data. So you will see the difference between census versus sampling. So time and again, I think the last was done 2015. Uh, Census of the National Household Population Commission surveyed the household, etc., etc. And your census would entail versus sampling. So every unit of your population is studied. So of course, since every unit is sampled or is taken into consideration, it's reliable and accurate. But since it tries to it would test for all units of population, it's very expensive. So it's suitable when your population is of homogeneous in nature. Sampling, which we would learn in latter lectures. Okay, so fewer units of population are studied. Since you only sample, it's less reliable and would yield less accurate results, although it's less expensive. And suitable, of course, when your population is heterogeneous and very large. Okay? So this is your face-to-face interview. So before we delve into the advantages and disadvantages, so observe it and go back to your communication skills we learned back in first semester. Okay, what could you tell about this face-to-face interview? Is the interviewer effective? Sinong magtatawa?
No po. No
How?
po, Doc.
In what way do you think, for example, if you were the interviewer,
Doc, because he's not paying attention to, like, nakatingin lang po siya dun sa questionnaire na instead of looking at the one he's interviewing.
okay, he is not establishing eye contact. That's correct. He is just looking at the paper. Okay, if maybe if the picture was in the act of the patient, the respondent already answered, the interviewer is writing on the questionnaire. Okay, that's correct. What else? How else? What else could you say about this picture? As far as the respondent is concerned, what can you say regarding our respondent? Get the line. Sean. What can you say with regards to the respondent's nonverbal gestures? Siyempre, nonverbal picture lang, di ba? Sorry naman. Edeline or anyone?
Hello, Doc.
Yes, Edeline.
Para pong ano, pwede siyang magsinungaling sa answers niya. Parang ganun. Parang parang kaya niyang, ano ba to, hindi niya sasabihin kung ano yung
Totoo.
totoo.
Did you say that? If you were at America, you would be already in line for racism. O hindi magsasabi ng totoo, perkat black. How would you say? What made you say that she would not be saying the truth as a respondent? Anyone wants to help Adeline? Karina, Giselle. What's the body language of the respondent?
Doc? Ay, try ko po. Deslate po.
Sige, Stephanie.
Ay, kasi Doc, yung kumbaga yung appearance ng respondent is confident siya. Kasi she could make an eye contact with the interviewer. Kaya siguro nasabi ni Ate Eds yun kasi nga parang confident yung respondent, parang kayang-kaya niya sagutin lahat ng itatanong sa kanya kasi makikita naman sa kanya na ready siya eh. For me, ito pa.
You see that the respondent is actually the one trying to make eye contact. Okay? One good point. Okay? But what is the general demeanor of the respondent if you are to look at the body language?
Doc, uncomfortable po.
Uncomfortable? What tells you that this respondent is not comfortable?
Doc, yung hands po are placed closer to the body, which means she's trying to go back to her safe zone po.
Hands are closed, as if protecting the body. That's correct. That tells so much. But it's correct that your patient is trying to, kumbaga, if this is a student, what will I think if this one is looking at me like that? Ang hirap kasi hindi kayo naka-video kami. Or hindi tayo face to face. Pero for example, if I am the lecturer and I see this respondent, what is she actually telling me? I'm daring you to ask me the question. Not unlike pag ayaw sumagot, what's the usual demeanor? Ayaw sumagot.
Nervous po siya.
Ang makikita ko, bumbunan lang. No eye contact whatsoever. Stooped shoulders. So, the interviewer may have failed to what? Establish rapport in the first place with this respondent. And it tells a lot. Okay? Sinayang niya yung advantage ng face-to-face interview. This might have just been a telephone mail-in questionnaire and there may not have been any difference. What do you think? O sana inabot na lang niya yung papel, pinasagot yung questionnaire. Could be. And you could have had the same result. Sayang, because the advantage of your personal interview, so of course, your response rate would be high. Unless sobrang introvert yung ini-interview mo. Have you encountered a person like that? Kinausap mo na, hindi sumagot? There are people like that. And it's nothing against them, it's just their personality. And again, it's a challenge to an interviewer to draw out answers from that kind of person. Pag extrovert naman, in a face-to-face interview, what's the difficulty? And I'm sure in your past interviews, in your undergrad, you have experienced this. Pag extrovert naman, madaldal yung respondent mo.
May
Ano ang
tendency po na baka po mag-cut each other po sila. Para hindi pa po tapos ang question, biglang may na naman po another input.
Isa yung tanong mo, ang sagot niya 10. Correct? Minsan, ang tanong mo lang, yes or no, pero merong expansion answer. And it's also a skill of your interviewer, what? To cut and direct and focus your interview. So this is one-on-one. Iba pa yung small group discussion as for example, a teacher would often do with the students, etc. Okay, so you have, and in your patient interaction, eventually you will learn that. So if your patient would answer a lot and would give out a lot of tangential answers or would give a lot of extra data, o sayang na yung clinic hours mo. Sometimes 2 hours per clinic slot ka lang. So, but I'm not saying that any unnecessary data is, and any extra data would be unnecessary. Sometimes that's also important to establish rapport, the small talk, etc., etc. So you have to balance things. Okay? Of course, it will allow all types of questions, and of course, there could be clarifications. Okay. Disadvantage, most expensive. So, second, informants can be influenced, and of course, it's timely. Informants can be influenced in what way? You could draw out answers that you want. Kahit hindi yun ang intention ng naisagot nung hindi niya namamalayan na yun pala ang pinapasagot mo. There are skilled interviewers like that, and that is called facilitation. You facilitate the answers to be drawn out. Sometimes you do that also. But where is it most often used? In sales. Sinong na-ambush na sa SM ng mga pre-need, insurance, etc., etc.? What are the type of questions? Or pag may binibenta sila, meron na bang na-approach dito? So, or yung mga networker, kape-kape, what are their usual come-on questions, invites? May na-invite na ba? May nothing against networkers, but this is, like it or not, one of their decahon strategies. Nothing against the networking framework. So what are their questions? Gusto mo bang yumaman? What will your answer be to that? May sasagot ba ng hindi?
Wala po doon.
Yeah. Or do you want to have money yet have the time to spend with your family? Of course, you would not say no to that as well. Do you want to get rich while sleeping? Of course, you will have that pick your interest, and at the end, networking, same old, etc., etc. Ngayon, anong uso? bumabalik ang Bitcoin kasi biglang nagtaas ang presyo. But then again, you are facilitated into because you are asked questions that sorry, may i-admit that you need to answer that the facilitator knows that you cannot say no to, or you have no choice to agree. For example, your pre-need or insurance. When you die, do you think, what's the favorite question of insurances? Pre-need. When you die, do you want to make sure that your family is well taken care of? Of course, I would say no to that. Okay? So those are your advantages and disadvantages. All right? Okay. Mail questionnaire. Of course, this would be the most common data collection tool now with the pandemic. So of course, that is the advantage right now. But advantages, of course, it would be least expensive, and you could reach remote areas. Because if it's mail, there's a bit of influence with your respondents as well. Disadvantage, you cannot unless long response time, especially if you look at if you choose the email as a means or the snail mail as a means for the survey, of course you cannot determine response rate. And of course, cannot be used by your illiterates and your visual impaired. So of course, you are not around to clear questions. Okay. Telephone. Advantage and disadvantage. Marami na bang natatawagan dito? O hindi pa nakacirculate yung telephone number nyo? Cellphone pala. Okay? So, of course, the limitation of which is dapat sagutin ka nung tinawagan mo. But advantage would be low cost, high response rate if you are answered, or less influence on the informant. Okay? Limited use, and of course, you cannot see eye contact such that reactions cannot be watched. Okay? So secondary data, it's either published or unpublished. So this is likened to your collected by someone else and used by the investigator. In layman, chismis. Pero may chismis na credible, meron chismis na hindi. So it could be published or unpublished. So government publications, journals, etc., unpublished sources, your census, your clinic records, etc. Okay? So this is one of our activity during the session. Usually we do breakout discussions for this. So there's a measles outbreak. Okay, you've had this case, 319 cases of measles for the previous week. Previously, there were just 26 per week. So, and you see that including 25 children that has been immunized, you see 25 has measles. So what do you do? How do you investigate this? So for example, you're the city health officer, you get a memo or you get directive that, oh, you have to investigate. Where will you go? You have to get to the bottom of why people in Texarkana are getting measles all of a sudden. How will you go about it? Again, look at the logistics, look at your resources. Ano ka lang? Fourth rate municipality. So how will you collect data? Who is in my screen? Ray Isabel. Or anyone? Jiang. How will you collect data? If primary,
Siguro po, Doc, telephone calls.
ano?
Telephone calls po.
Telephone calls. Advantage of telephone calls.
Mas madali po. Mas madali pong ma-access yung data. Tsaka
Madali.
convenient po sa mga tao.
Convenient. Okay. Plus, what else? Remember, your measles is a contagious disease. Okay? So, for example, this is coronavirus. Would you do face-to-face? Could you imagine the resources that would entail? Face-to-face interview, you will look at your coronavirus source. Bawat lipat mo ng bahay, change ng PPE and protective equipment, etc. Okay, so your task is to locate. So questionnaire, okay? Telephone call. Who will you call? Who would your resources be? As far as the measles outbreak would be concerned. Nika. Ito, Ellie Joy, ito sino?
Siguro, Doc, yung reported cases po. Yung families po nung na-report namin.
Families. You start from the families. You ask for students who absented themselves, mga nag-consult sa clinic or sa health center, absented from work. So you could start from there. And of course, you know that measles is contagious. That's the importance of knowing your locality. So you look at the household and there you do contact tracing. Okay? So that's the same way that they do with your coronavirus. So for example, UK variant has penetrated the Philippines. So what happens? They did contact tracing with the co-passengers and the household of the passenger infected. And I think there were 5 more. Okay? So as mentioned, you look at the school clinic, class attendance, consult of the ER, of course, your known patients. Okay. So sources of data on health and ill health. So you have a lot. So census of hospitals, civil registries, reports of your city health office, and the like. Okay. So I think I asked this in the quiz. So it's the best source of data, your census, with regards to population characteristics. So of course, this is important because we have a lot of social determinants of health that we could derive from our census, household census. Okay? So what I would like to focus on would be reports of occurrence of notifiable disease. This is RA 3573. Okay? So this one, if you see it, you are to report it within 24 hours. This is category 1. So any acute flaccid paralysis, especially recently because there has been a resurgence of polio. Okay? Any adverse event following immunization, anthrax, avian flu, measles, meningo, neonatal tetanus, shellfish poisoning, rabies, SARS, any outbreaks of coronavirus is included here, clustering of disease, and unusual diseases or trends. Okay? Within 1 week, so this is category 2, would be the following. Okay? So know the difference between the two diseases, urgent and weekly notifiable. Okay? Even in the boards that comes out. For sources of mortality data would be your vital statistics registration system, that's your death certificate, national sample surveys, hospital records, and notification of infectious illness. Okay? So these are sensitive records that we have. So guard this with your life. So it's not something that we post on social media, especially with the advent of identity theft. Okay? So, sino na lang nagkaroon ng second profile na hindi ikaw ang gumawa? Sometimes it does happen. And sometimes the second profile is used for malicious purposes. So that's identity theft. It's hard. One example that I always share is that my brother's experience was we learned that he has taken 3 cars that we have never seen. Bumili daw kami ng kotse, siya pala. Bumili daw ang brother ko ng kotse, pero never pa naming nakita. So, bangko ang pumupunta sa bahay asking us where the car is. And we didn't even know that the car was existed. We didn't even know that the car was bought. So, upon investigation, it was identity theft. Hanggang ngayon, problema pa namin. Kasi hinahanap pa rin sa amin yung car. But with the investigations, all our neighbors told us that they have never seen the car within our vicinity or within our use. But it's hard. So guard your important IDs with your life. Okay? That's your birth cert, eventually passport, driver's license, ano pa? Diploma, uso kaya, moonlight, why? For example, offhand idea how much a moonlighter would earn. 4,000 to 4,500 per duty. Plus procedures, plus benefits, etc. would sometimes reach 6 to 8,000 to 10,000 per day. Depends. Mag back-to-back ka lang, mahina 15,000, 2 days. Okay? And that's lucrative for people, even for non-medical graduates. So what will they do? They will get a PRC license sa recto and they will moonlight. Why? You will just call the consultant, ask what to do, etc. etc. Skills, kayang matutunan kung gugustuhin. Mag-assist, hawak lang, etc. So it's a lucrative racket even for the non-medical. Of course, again, that is not correct. So we have to put a stop. But sometimes, what happens? Dahil walang mag-duty, some hospitals turn a blind eye and accept these moonlighters without any credentials. And that endangers the life of a patient. Okay? So, make sure your identity records are not publicized or you guard it, your sensitive data. Hackers are abound, identity thieves are abound, and you have to be careful. Okay? Bakit kukunin ang death certificate? Bakit important ang death certificate?
Abuloy, Doc.
Ano?
Abuloy. Sa abuloy po. Yung mga
Abuloy.
nangihingi.
Where is it used? SSS, insurance claims, of course, if you have possessions or real estate, your estate tax, etc. And that's very important. So it's very important. Sometimes others use that for insurance fraud. Pa-file ng death certificate, buhay pa pala. Okay? So your other sources, rural health unit records. Again, credible ba pag galing sa social media? Yung pati report card nilalagay. So what are sensitive data that we unknowingly post? Aside from location at the moment. Ano yun? Hashtag ATM. Alam na. Wala ka sa bahay. What else? What else should you not post in social media with regards to your identity? And later on, you check your FB if you are hack proof.
Yung mga birthdays, Doc.
Birthday. E paano yan? Nagpo-post ka ng happy birthday, blah, blah, blah on that day. All of us are guilty of it. Right? So, alam na. O birthday na nag-post siya, birthday ganito, ganyan. Eh, anong laging tanong sa bangko? Mother's middle name. Meron minsan may mga slum book questions sa Facebook. Pero those are bank's privacy questions. Mother's maiden name, mother's birthday. Ano pa? Favorite name of your pet. O, di ba? Yan ang mga privacy questions, di ba? So, be wary of what you post. O, wag na mag-post, o wag na mag-share. So, use it wisely. That's the gist of it. Because your data is very sensitive and it's very private. Okay? Mga sakit, magpo-post ng ticket kasama yung QR code or kasama yung barcode. Data could be extracted from those items. Okay? Magpo-post ng report card ng anak or report card ng kung sino. Nandun ang pirma ng teacher ng school, ng teacher, ng teacher ng student. And that's an official document. So you have to be careful of these things. Okay? I think that's the last. Yeah. Okay? Any questions? Ano ba tayo? Hindi ko pa tinitignan yung schedule. At may hawak kayong schedule for next week. Sige, mag-a-announce na lang ako. Hindi ko pa naayos yung next week's schedule. Okay? Any questions for this session? Fairly simple. Wala pa tayo sa compute. Nandun pa lang tayo sa we're just laying the ground for your biostatistics lessons. But still important as well. Okay, so we've had demography and sources of data. Any questions for the past 2 lectures? So if there's none, we could leave the room. Amy, nagla-light up yung box mo. Sige, mag-a-announce na lang ako. Paano kayo naglalab sa biochem? Curious lang. Anong ginagawa niyo? Hindi pa ako assigned eh.
Doc, wala pa pong advice si Doc Abrina. Wala pa pong advice si Doc Abrina sa lab. Wala pa po kami lab orientation.
Wala pa.
Sa February pa po.
February pa. Naka-umaasang mag-face-to-face na. Sige. Curious lang ako. Kasi usually Wednesdays we do lab, right? Tapos, syempre that would be experiments that we do on-site, lab work talaga. So, paano kaya i-online? Anyways. Alright. Okay, have a great weekend. See you next week. If there are no more questions, you may leave this room.
Thank you, Doc.
Okay.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you po, Doc.
Thank you po, Doc.
Thank you, Doc.